Welcome to episode 22 of Speak Up, I'm Israel. Today's guest is going to be Shara. She's the executive director of TMC, Dating Noah, and the host of The Moral Compass. Today we're going to explore the modern world of Noahide, right? What that looks like, Shara's journey, her organization, and how they're working together to change the world and return everyone back to a moral compass. So, Shara, I'm so happy to have you here and be able to do this formally. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. I am really honored. My name is Shara, and I like to just go by Shara. My organization is TMC, and it stands for the Moral Community. We are formerly known as the Noahides Community Foundation, and we changed our name in order to kind of reach a broader demographic, but essentially the purpose of my organization is to provide resources for people that are walking away from previous worldviews such as Christianity or, Islam or, all the other types of religions that are out there, but also more maybe secular worldviews as well that may not be in line with the Torah or with just morality in general. We want to provide resources for them so that they can build communities and feel connected to one another, and to not feel like, walking away from their former religion or worldview means that they've lost something. So we offer a variety of services, including matchmaking. We, occasionally have events, support groups, just all kinds of things. So we really, if there's a gap that's, we try to fill the gap. So
amazing. So tell me, how did you get here, right? How did you become kind of this person at the forefront of creating the moral compass and creating this environment for people? Because I know I personally also left Christianity, and I spent time as a Noahide before making the decision to become Jewish. And it was a lonely place. It felt like kind of an in the middle of, you don't really belong anywhere. You're trying to let go of one thing, but you don't really belong in this place. And what does that look like? So I'd love to hear your journey and what motivated you to really start this process for you.
So I was raised as a Christian in a Seventh-day Adventist household. And Christianity for me was essentially, it was a religion that I saw as fictitious growing up, only because I have always been more of a logical thinker. And I know that there are different people in church. Not everyone attends church for the same reasons, right? A lot of people attend churches because it's a place where you can be with your family. It's a place, it's a routine for your children. It's structure. And some people actually go there because they feel that God has instructed them to be there, and they have to be there, and there's some sort of a spiritual compunction to be there. My family, it was a mixture of both, right? I didn't see a lot of times that my parents were convicted about a lot of the things that they were learning in church. You could hear it on the drive to church and from church. You could hear them kind of talking, and in the background, and I'd be listening and asking questions. Not that they ever outright questioned the nature of the Christian God or anything, but I had started my journey thinking about what this religion that I inherited was early on. Eventually I got to college age, and in my college years, I kind of just threw away the baby and the bathwater. I started going that Christianity is just flawed, and therefore it can't be divine, right? How can something be divine, meaning that God instituted it, and it'd be flawed? It doesn't make sense. And so I started to identify as an atheist until I had a conversation with someone who explained to me, that if God is not real, I guess you have nothing to lose with that perspective. But if God is real, you have everything to lose. And that kind of, gave me a thought shift and made me start to reconsider, put me back on the track of thinking, because I think there are a lot of people that actually go through the world and don't think, just trying to survive and understand that, or just be entertained by life. YOLO is just all about, having pleasure and entertainment. And I think all of these things are aspects of life, but it's not the purpose of life, right? And so I think you can get to that place where you question God, you throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then you you are directionless almost. And, God has to do things to kind of remind you that there's more. And so I had a God moment where I was sitting on top of the roof of my car, and I looked out into the night sky, and it just felt too vast for me. And from that point, I started thinking, this all can't be just because, of an explosion. It can't be because of it's just too, it's too organized to be random,
Yeah.
And I had that, not looking at, nature and studying science and all that. No, I was literally just looking at the stars in the sky and looking at the vastness of the night sky. And it just, for me, I had an epiphany at that moment. And then I said, okay, let's give this God thing another chance. And I started going back to church, Seventh-day Adventism. Still, I was like, yeah, well, we're still not adding up here, And I would say this is very critical for me and people that I guess that come out of Christianity that think like me, is that I would say that as of today, my relationship with God will never, ever be based on information that is given to me. And I don't say that to discredit the divinity of the Torah as much as God, he supersedes everything. His essence of being supersedes everything. So if the Torah did not exist, if a rabbi did not exist, if pastors don't exist, if spiritual leaders don't exist, I am always going to be cognizant that there is a God, because I considered him because he revealed himself. I feel like I had an Abraham kind of a moment, before everything was laid out for me. And so, in any event, I throughout all of my different religious experiences after coming away from atheism, I moved from Seventh-day Adventism to non-denominational Christianity to Hebrew roots, Messianic Judaism. You know how that goes.
Yeah. The staircase out. I always call it the staircase out of the abbess.
I like that.
It's slow staircase out of into freedom, for sure.
I like that that language, because that is a good way to put it. But yeah, I went through all those common steps, and it is very common for Noahides to kind of go, use that staircase to get to where we're going. But I've always been anchored. No matter where I was, I always said, okay, I may not agree with this principle and this theology and this book, but God doesn't change. So that's kind of like the anchor for my position as a Noahide, is that, God is never going to be what I question ever again in my life. I might question a theology, but I'll never question God. I eventually started to explore Judaism because, I'm learning more about that through Messianic Judaism and Hebrew roots. But then I started to, as I started to question all of that, I realized that as much as it was shedding light on the origin story, if you will, of what is essentially a Jewish cult. That's what Christianity is, my opinion. That's how I describe it. It's a Jewish cult.
Yeah.
As I started to explore the origin story, I started thinking, well, what was wrong with, how it was to begin with, it, the God of, and I started to realize things like, oh, wait a minute. The God of the Old Testament is merciful. It's how it's portrayed in the Christian world to us. It makes it seem as though he was the tyrant, and along comes this wonderful savior who makes it all better for all the rest of us. The God of the Old Testament was merciful. When I started understanding the language of traditional Torah Judaism, I just became impressed with the fact that, wait a minute, they have been, co-opted, like they've been, and this new religion is coming along trying to act as though they have something better when there was nothing wrong with,
I want to pause you for 1 second, because I think this is something really important, especially because our audience is mainly Jewish. This is something that I'm always trying to explain to people who have been raised like from birth, that don't really understand what the Jewish perception is of the Torah, or what the Jewish or the non-Jewish, the Christian perception is of the Old Testament, so to speak, or the God of Israel, or the Jews. So you hit on that just a little bit right there, in the sense of like, that he was this harsh God, and he was this unforgiving God, right? He was this all judgment, and now we have all this kindness, right? And I think a lot of Jews don't understand that many Christians, this is the perception. I think this is important for them to understand, that people coming from a Christian background have a very different view, right, of the Tanakh in general. So thank you for highlighting that. And if you can add anything to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it is really from a non-Christian's view of Judaism, is that it's a legalistic religion where you have essentially the most insensitive, the most callous kind of natured individuals kind of just being a part of this. I hope I don't get in trouble, maybe in the Muslim world for saying this, but it's similar to maybe how people view Islam as being a very, it's a very judgmental religion. It's a religion where there is no mercy, there is no grace, there is no. And, what I think attracts people to Christianity is the need for forgiveness, is the need for mercy, the need for understanding that we are human beings that are flawed, and, that we err. And the perception is that that God in his essence of being is incapable. God, the quote unquote Father, which is how Christians term God, right? The Father of Jesus. So God the Father is almost incapable, though maybe he might want to be. He's incapable of being compassionate and full of grace. He needed to have his, come along, Sonny, you help me out, He needed to have his assistant, is a little bit more compassionate. Even his assistant wouldn't have been able, in their theology, to understand human nature until he became a human being. So for them, this is the whole, how can you not have Jesus? God cannot understand man unless he becomes man. God and man are so disconnected. And it's like, once I realized, wait a minute, no, the God of the Torah he knows all things. What are we saying here? He knows all things. He comprehends everything about our nature. So one of the passages from the Torah that really helped me to finally get it, and also to understand that God was not a being with physical form and didn't need to be, but also understanding that he was very gracious and merciful, is, I don't remember exactly where, but you'll know generally where I'm referring to. But when God is speaking to Moses and he asks him to show him his face. And in Christian theology, that translates to, maybe God literally, hey, like my goatee, And whereas, when you understand it from a Torah perspective, it's God is not a being like, a flesh and blood being. It's God showing us and saying to us, I cannot show you my face, because that's what he says to Moshe. He says, Moses, I cannot show you my face. I can only show you my back, not a literal thing. And what it really means is, I cannot show you the future. Essentially, that would be too hard for you. You cannot know what's going to happen, but I am going to show you what I've done for humanity in the past. Look at me. I am merciful. I am kind. I am gracious. I am long suffering. And so if this is the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Torah, saying everything that we think about this Christian God, that he is merciful, gracious, and long suffering, why did we need him to come along and to demonstrate that? So
it's amazing. And I think this comes along with your whole moral compass concept, right? because one of the things that I'm a very black and white person, and growing up I was the kid always getting in trouble for like, why don't we keep all the 10 commandments? Like, why does my grandmother was Catholic, so like, why does she have an idol? Like, where are their idols? Why are we going to church on Sunday? Like, I was always that kid that was, everyone's like, be quiet in the back of the room, like, so that was me. And I think just the moral, when you really look at the Torah and the morality that's in it, the code. I once heard a rabbi say that even if you pulled Hashem, Chas v'shalom, out of the Torah, like the Torah is this amazing guidebook for living a moral life. Even when you look at like the laws between people, if you steal something, you have to give it back. If you do this, something's damaged, all of this just moral compass, right? That is so applicable to the entire world, not just the Jewish people, right?
Exactly, absolutely. And I like to say, and this is, I'm firmly convicted in this, is that the Torah comes along because we can't seem to get it right. The Torah, I understand, in Kabbalistic conversation and views, and not just Kabbalistic, but really the essence of the Torah is that the Torah was used to establish the world, so it's not what I'm saying is the writing of it down is necessary because we as mankind can't seem to acknowledge the moral compass that is really inside of each of us. And I'll point that out. So we all know that the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai is the literal physical Torah, right?
Yeah.
And that was not done at the beginning of the world, though it was used to, the essence of it was used to create the world. It was done at Sinai. This is an event that occurs long, after creation. But what happens to the generations between that time and the giving of the Torah at Sinai? Did they not have any moral accountability? Did they not have, so that's why, if you're looking at God and saying you cannot know God unless you read the Torah, then you're not acknowledging that there was a way before the Torah was given. And you're failing to, or you might be misguided into thinking that means that you're saying that the Torah is not necessary. No, the Torah became necessary because we as human beings have a tendency to distort the nature of God. That's where paganism comes in. That's where all of the man-made religions, it's like we just couldn't help ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, inside of
Let's
us,
reinvent the wheel 5,000 times, right? Like, yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Inside of all of us, there is a moral compass, a guide. I'm sure of this. But society convolutes it. The information around us, our family life, all kinds of things distort your compass from a very early age. People say, well, children are so terrible. How can you say that, you have a moral compass? Children in their most pure form, if they were not to, they have a moral compass. That doesn't mean they don't make bad choices. It just means that they know that it's wrong to do certain things. This is why when they catch them with the, peanut butter all over their face, and it's like, what did you? No, that hesitation. Yeah. If they felt there was nothing wrong with it and they're walking around like little sociopaths or whatever, they'd be like, no, it's fine. You can see that there's a little bit of hesitation because they know that maybe that's not the right thing to say. We are all endowed with a moral compass, but along comes the Torah to rescue us from our constant error, to fill that God-shaped hole with these man-made beliefs and ideas.
Yeah. Amazing. So question, in terms of like the Noahides, we want to ask some questions, a little bit about your community. What does it look like? Is it a religion? Do you guys, what do you guys do for Shabbat, holidays? What does that look like for the Noahide community? And I know it's not the same, obviously, for each person, but what does that in general look like for you guys?
Right. So, I was really, excited to, and I hope you're asking this question, and really excited to be able to touch on it. But the Noahide community is not like the Jewish community in that the Jewish community has a set of prescriptions on how to live life that is universal amongst Jews from all parts of the world. Of course, there are different minhags, different customs that everyone has that are different, and they're, the customs are different, but there's a prescription that is universal. In fact, that is the definition of being Torah adherent if you're a Jewish person, is that you don't get to modify that prescription because God instituted it. So, whether you're, a Jewish person that is somehow a part of some sort of Igbo tribe in Africa, or, in Alaska or somewhere in New Zealand, it doesn't matter, or Israel, Jews have a very specific prescription. In the morning, this is a prayer that's said. In the evening, this is a prayer that's said. In the afternoon, this is what we do on this feast day and that feast day, and this is how we eat, how we wash our hands. I know a lot of these things because I attempted conversion to Judaism, and that didn't pan out. But I learned that there is so much that is expected on a very, there's so much minutia to the lifestyle. And I think that there is, this idea when people start to learn, when Noahides or, Gentiles start to reject Christianity and all their other worldviews and start to embrace the universal moral laws via the Torah, there's this idea that they should model after Jewish prescriptions. Which I think is, and again, so I'm not a fan of religion. So if you don't mind asking me some questions about that, I will explain what I mean by that, because that triggers people because it's not fully understood what I mean when I say that. But I'm not a fan of religion. I believe that there is only one religion, and that I believe that is a divinely instituted religion. And I believe Judaism is that religion. I'm not a fan of man-made religions. So when Noahides come into the movement, our community, what our community looks like, you have people that are kind of still addicted to religion. They're addicted to that man-made, give me a prescription for life. What do I do in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? And there's nothing wrong with that until there is, right? When it starts to affect your family life, your extended family life, when it starts to affect your society, if you're not able to see how things can be psychologically hindering and all those kinds of things, that's when it becomes a problem. Until it becomes a problem, it's really just a discipline, to each their own. So our communities are very, it's just diverse, which is, I think, how it's supposed to be. We are the 70 nations. Israel is one nation. We are the 70 nations. It's not Israel and then the other nation. We're not one, community of people that think and walk and talk and act alike. Unfortunately, I feel like at this present, the only voice that is largely heard are people who kind of think in a certain way. And there's nothing wrong with that. They kind of constitute a type of Noahide, but there are many, many types of Noahide. So when you ask, what does our community look like? I would say there isn't one real look. What ties us together is our acknowledging that there is a universal prescription for, which is more of an outline for life. The details are not required, because that can evolve from culture to culture and from nation to nation. If you think of man-made religions, man-made religions have always kind of come in to say, look, God has created a prescription for all of us. And that's where colonialism comes in, right? That's where you get, the church coming in and setting up boarding schools for the indigenous people here in the United States, where I am, and trying to civilize them so that they can walk and talk and look and act the way that the church does. And again, that I feel like when you try to create a prescription for everyone that's a one size fits all, people lose their culture and their heritage and a lot of the wisdom that they gained from their ancestors and those who have come before, a lot of family traditions. This is why I'm against man-made religion, and why I think the community needs to remain diverse. But our community it's very diverse.
Yeah, thank you. So I was recently in Jerusalem, and it was so interesting because I was like kind of walking like bird's eye view through Jerusalem, and there's many man-made religions and many religions and groups all converging on what is Jerusalem, right? And as I'm walking and I was like looking around, and I was like, you know what? Like, all of these people are trying to be in the holiest place on the earth and connect to God. Like, they're coming through different avenues. Many of them are wrong. Many of them have gotten lost along the way, you know, but everybody wants this piece of property, right? Because there's a recognition that it's holy, and that this is where the God of Israel placed his name, right? And this is that foundation. And it was interesting to see that, because I was like, you know, the prophets discuss that his house will be a house of prayer for all nations, right? All nations. Everyone's going to come and give offerings when there's a third temple. Everyone, it doesn't say the Jewish people and people from one place. Like, the entire world is going to have this acknowledgement and recognition. And I think that was a big shift for me, to see Jerusalem in that light and go, wow, like, of course these people are here. They're here because they're clinging to the creator of the universe on whatever level they know it is, right? And everyone is there at the Temple Mounts, you know what I mean, going there for a different reason and a different place. And it was beautiful. There was a bunch of people they were there from Nigeria. A bunch of the Igbo people were there when I went, and it was so beautiful to see them connecting, you know. And I was just like, wow, like, from all over the world, people are connecting to the creator of the universe and the place that they believe his name was, you know, like. So I think there is, and there was so much diversity. They were in their beautiful traditional Nigerian dresses and standing at the temple. And I was like, wow, my daughter took pictures with them all, because it was like, wow, this is so like unique and beautiful. And that people they don't have to change that. They don't have to give up their beautiful Nigerian culture to worship and be holy. And I think that's the next point I want to talk to you a little bit about, because you mentioned that, like, going through that journey and people being addicted to religion. One of the main things I get is someone's like, you know, feet are still wet from walking out of, you know, the church. And they're like, where can I convert? I have to be Jewish tomorrow. And most of the time I'm like, yeah, no, you don't have to be Jewish, right? Like you said, there's 70 nations. There's 70 nations. Not everyone is supposed to be Jewish. And it's not everyone's path. It happened to be my path. And it's not an easy path. And it's not a path I recommend for everyone that doesn't, you know, that isn't going to up and move everything and move to Israel and completely change their life, which I did. It's not, and there isn't a higher or a lesser path. And I think that's something that's really important, because a lot of people feel like, oh, I didn't do this. And as I see you and I see, you know, your journey and how it's just unfolded and how you've created all of these amazing things, like, this is the purpose that Hashem put you on the planet for, not to be Jewish sitting here in Jerusalem beside me, or, you know, it's to be a light to the country that you live in and to the people that are around you in the community. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that, like, that addiction to religion. And it's actually, I almost feel like it needs to be like a psych eval prior to conversion, because I think a lot of people are seeking to belong. They're seeking, you know, but they're not really seeking the whole package deal, which is 613 mitzvot, right? Instead of 7, instead of basic morality, you know, this is how I have to live my life. And then everything else is, I get to fill in and draw the gaps. Like you said, I get to paint what that looks like within the 7, you know, mitzvot. So I think that's beautiful. I also wanted to ask you, what has been your experience with, like, missionaries or people coming into your organization? I know as the Jewish people, we experience that a lot. What does that look like in the Noahide world for you guys?
So when it comes to my organization, we're very discriminatory, and we have a lot of ways, because I am kind of aware how furtive, you know, Christian missionizing can be. Being in that kind of world at some point. So we think a lot ahead when it comes to how to prevent them from kind of infiltrating. And that's not, so for example, we have a couple of groups out there. One of our groups, we don't have any kind of, it's an open door, you know, anyone can come in, any religion. Immediately the conversation is closed to anything related to Christianity or idolatry. It doesn't matter, or even atheism. If it's just, because I believe a staunch atheist it's a religion of its own. You're saying you know something that you can't prove. But we get a lot of interactions from people, and I can see that in the comments, like, well, what about this and what about that? And you can know, oh, that's a Christian talking, because only a Christian would ask that question. It's like, fine, you're welcome here, but let me teach you the correct thing. So I'm very big about correcting misconceptions. So I won't just allow, and all the admins in the group are, we don't just allow people to skate through and kind of throw in their little side comments about Christ no, it's immediately addressed so that we can provide education. So the goal is, if anyone reaches out to us, whether by email, by, communicating in our groups, and we happen to know and we can detect that they are, coming from a Christian or a messianic angle, we want to educate them, because they too can potentially change. I think there's nothing more important than giving people an opportunity to question, because that's what they're not getting in their churches. And so sometimes it's going to come across like, if they are asking questions in groups or making comments that you see as promoting their idol, it's really just kind of like a frustration that they're venting about an unanswered question. So, you got to have a lot of discretion, I think, in knowing who is really, who is a pastor undercover and is determined to missionize, and who is a person that is just a Christian with questions and is kind of trying to go to bat for JC, but really kind of still unsure, So, I think we, trying to use a little bit of discretion to filter out based on the types of questions that are asked. You can get an idea, and address it that way. Did that answer the question?
No, that totally did. Yeah, I was in Jerusalem for Purim this year, and I was going to a big Purim Suda, and I'm sitting down, and because we come from this background, I can spot a missionary and a Christian from like 100 feet, 100 yards away. I'm already like, Christian, ding, 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 ding. I already know just the way they speak, the way they interact, and so this gentleman comes to the table. He had befriended the slightly intoxicated guest or host of the meal at the hotel, befriended him, said he was Jewish, said he didn't have a meal, and got himself into this meal with, 60, 70 Jewish people sitting at the table for a Purim Suda. And so I'm sitting there, and everyone's going around introducing themselves and, talking and what they're grateful for. And we get to him, and he immediately goes into giving his testimony, how he was an atheist, his mother's Jewish, and, he found Jesus and this whole thing. And immediately I had to stop him. I went to the host in Hebrew and basically was like, this is a Christian. This person it's a Vodazara. It's idol worship. And he's trying to missionize at your table. And he was like, whoa. And I realized that he didn't even understand, like within his psyche as someone who was raised Jewish, the idea of wanting to impose his belief on someone else, because that's so foreign to the Jewish world. The Jewish world is so busy just trying to enforce Jewish laws on each other, on within, to keep their kids Jewish, to keep their own family like within these laws, that it doesn't even register, I don't think, that someone would, literally stand at the kotel and try and get into a meal simply to give over the gospel, right? And so for me and you, that's like so obvious. Like, yeah, he was a great missionary, great ploy, right? This is exactly what they do. And so I want to like talk a little bit about what that, coming from that background, you and I get that. And I think it's a piece of education that's missing from the Jewish people, this idea of evangelism, because it's not present in the Jewish world. And so that idea that we need to change the world, we need to impose our beliefs on others. We see Christianity, Islam has done that obviously for the last 2,000 years for Christianity, 700 years for Islam. We're going to force our beliefs on others, right? And so have you run into, within the Noahide world, people that are still having that mindset, or how would you explain that to a Jewish audience, like what that looks like? Because I feel like that entire concept of evangelism is so foreign to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, it's like what you said, it's not even it wasn't even in his psyche, you know, because that's not how he views the world. He views the world as, you know, if you have something good to share it. You know, why would you? It's kind of like being around wolves, you know, you just don't know because you're not like a wolf, you know, you can't, but at some point you have to educate yourself. It's like I try to tell people, even in the world of, you know, understanding that we need to develop our morals. There's an assumption that everybody has them, and it is not true. We really, really need to develop strong, good morals, and religion is not the way to do that, in my opinion. Yeah. But the way in which you do that is by recognizing and seeing immorality. Yeah. By just simply focusing on what is moral, you're living in a bubble. And so therefore, people that are moral are going to come in with their smiles, wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're going to, until, you know, some of your sheep are slaughtered. Right. And then you get up in arms. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to be very sensitive with how I say this, because I understand Israel is going through a lot right now, and Noahides, we are allies. That's one thing I want to provide as a reassurance is Noahides are allies to the Jewish people. And, you know, we've got your guy, like we've got your back, you know, anything happens over on this side, you know, if there's a Noahide around you, we've got your back. Yeah. But at the same time, you need to understand that everyone around in the world that doesn't respect the Torah and doesn't respect the God of Israel doesn't necessarily have your back. Yeah. And you have to be aware that there are people who are wolves that see themselves as sheep, right? Or they see themselves as the good guys. Yeah. And they are going to try to help you. So it's not that they come in with devious plans, you know, twisting their whiskers. I'm going to get them into Satanism or you know, some sort of evil. No, they think that they're going to pull you into the light because you are in the darkness. You have rejected their God. And so let's pull you into the light.
They think we've missed the mark, right? They think we're blind sheep and we miss the coming of our own Mashiach. Like, right? Like
they are helping.
This is what they believe. They're helping us. This is what they believe.
Exactly. Yeah. They are helping. And if you're not aware that this is happening around you, okay, it might seem, okay, so somebody might know this, right? I'm just imagining a Jewish person might say, maybe even if that's true, what's the harm? The harm is that they're going to come in and they're going to now start to or continue to mimic, which is what they've always been doing. As I mentioned, Christianity is a big Jewish cult. They're going to now see how you hold your seders, how you hold your feasts, how you do this, how you do that. And now they're going to be able to lure your children and your children's children, because now when they take a lot of the things that they've observed you doing in your authentic traditional gatherings and homes, now they're going to do that and replicate that in their Christian worlds. And when your children go and meet them on the street, they're not going to be able to see that this is a wolf. They're going to go, well, that's exactly what, you know, my Ima did and my Abba did. And this is, you know, this, what could be so bad, you know? No. Right.
They're keeping Shabbat. They're saying Shema, right? They have Tallit on, Kippah, right? Exactly. I remember he was in Las Vegas. Yeah, I was in Nevada, and I'd called because there was a synagogue nearby, and I was trying to figure out what was close enough to my hotel. And I walked over. It was Shabbat. I walked over. I came in, and it took me 20 minutes to realize it was a Messianic synagogue. They had got it so authentically Jewish that it took me, who pride myself in being able to point it out and get it, 20 minutes. I recently saw people were sending pictures of Donald Trump being dragged off in handcuffs, and you know the picture looked incredibly authentic. It was AI and it was fake, right? And yet, and I feel like this is what's happening is they're getting more and more ammunition. And one of the things we really discuss here in Israel is a lot of the money that is sent from Christian missionary organizations, and all of this money is coming and funding with a purpose. It's not just innocently, oh, we want to help Israel. It's like, no, we want to help Israel to become Christian. Like, I think they missed that part, that our real allies are Noahides, not the Christian people. I think that's really key, that we understand who our enemy and who our friends really are. And I think we get that wrong sometimes, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, again, as I mentioned, I completely agree with you, but as I mentioned, I wanted to be very sensitive, but I did want to say something I think is important. Yeah. And I say this at obviously the risk of judgment and being misunderstood, but, God willing, B'ezrat Hashem, my words will be clear to those who are listening to this. One of the, Noahide laws is obviously do not have idols. A Noahide, when Israel becomes a theocracy, and when that Noahide is allowed to reside in the land of Israel, will have to put aside a lot of things, and they will have to assimilate and adapt to a lot of the ways of Israel.
Yeah.
They will not be allowed to live in the land of Israel, and to even, for instance, I am a Noahide that doesn't do certain things that others might think is, necessary. I consider myself a simple Noahide. But if I were to live in the land of Israel, I would have to conform to the laws and the practices that are necessary. Obviously, not whatever I do in my home. If I had a home in Israel, what I did within my home is, as long as it maintained the Noahide laws, I would be fine on that.
Right.
But outside of that, there needs to be a respect for the Jewish world around us. We couldn't open shops on Shabbat.
Yeah.
If Israel was a theocracy, we couldn't do anything. And why is that? I mean, there's so much speculation as to maybe, the motivation behind it, but common sense could tell you. How are you going to foster a spirit of pride in Judaism and being Jewish and honoring Hashem in your children when you see people around you that are doing everything that you're not supposed to be doing? Yeah. I mean, we see it everywhere. We have the same issues in the Noahide world, where you're trying to raise your children to be morally inherent, and you just turn on the TV and someone is there to undo all the hard work that you put in. Yeah. So the point is, being, as much as, Jewish people are, and there's always exceptions, but by and large, very caring people that are peaceful. This is why they're referred to as the suffering servant in the Torah. The Jewish people are supposed to be a people of peace. That does not mean you should allow people to walk into your land and take it over. This is not peace. It hasn't led to peace. Can we see since October 7th?
Yeah.
You cannot be in bed with the enemy. You have, in my opinion right now, and this is something I guess we're going to get to the discussion on maybe Geulah or whatever, but there needs to be a point, an awakening in the Jewish community, that all these Christians around you and all these different religions that are, shalom, no.
They're not. Yeah.
They're not necessarily your enemies that would not support you, because as we saw, you've heard the stories during the Holocaust where you had nuns that were taking in Jewish children and protecting them. I'm not saying every Christian, every person from every religion is somehow some devious wolf in sheep's clothing, but it doesn't mean that ignorance that they have about is going to be, it's not innocent. It can cause harm, and it will cause harm. And you are not allowed as a nation to entertain idolatry within your households, within your state, within the land of Israel. It needs to be free of idolatry. This is my prayer, that the Jewish people will rise and say no more. No more churches, none of this. Amen. And I will be there, on the front lines. Buy me a plane ticket, What do I gotta do? I'll rally the troops.
Yeah,
idolatry.
I hear you.
Stop
It has to go.
entertaining it.
I was just having this conversation. So I was just a speaker at a women's retreat on the Sea of Galilee, on the Kinneret. And as I was standing there, here is so many churches and famous places and things. And I was just like, we don't belong here. Like this does not belong in our land. This is a holy place. This is our land, and it's being desecrated. And I agree with you. There's become a complacency among the Jewish people. And I think it comes from, 2,000 years of just trying to defend and convince of our right to even exist, let alone have our own land, right? I mean, we're historically pretty young. We're 70 years in, of creating this amazing, vessel of what will be, the land of Israel, like you said, a theology at some point, please Hashem soon. But yeah, it is. There is a big difference, and I actually applaud you for having the confidence to say that, because I think the Jewish people do need to hear it. I know that I say it, and people are like, no, it's not so simple. And I'm like, we serve the God of Israel. Get rid of idolatry in our land. Stop taking money from idolatrous, and I have to paint a picture to them. Do you understand that someone just gave a whole speech and they dedicated their life to Jesus, and then they put money in a pot to Jesus, and that money is then being sent to you? That is blood money. That is not money that should be feeding your children. That is not money that we accept. And I think that is really what we, at Speak Up, that's our main goal, is to really educate people on the dangers of these coalitions, of these, combining with friendships with, even the recent event when after the war, after the war started on October 7th, we had the big in DC, and we had Christian pastors up there speaking. And I'm like, why?
Sorry for the eyes.
Why? Because as a Jewish people, we have become so afraid.
Yes.
Afraid, and now we're in a place of defense. We're in a place of convincing and trying to defend our right to exist, instead of being the priestly nation that Hashem said that we were, right? And I think that is the piece, I think, and I challenge the Noahides to help us step into that place. I think the Jews are afraid, if I'm being honest. Why do we allow idolatry to continue in our land? I struggle to go to Jerusalem. As someone who personally has done idol worship and is very aware of what each of those buildings, and I was walking with quite a few Jewish people, and they're walking through the streets, and I'm like, I cannot stand that this is Hashem's city, and there's idol worship everywhere. I can't go to King David's tomb without walking past the Last Supper's room and the church.
Yeah, I'm a part of the 70 nations, and I can't stand it here. Yeah. Where I am, this is not a holy land. This is not the holy land.
Right.
Do you understand? If I don't like it here, why do you tolerate it there? And I understand the fear. So also I can be sensitive in that way as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're human.
Yeah.
The children of Israel are not gods. They are humans. And I think this is where people get very frustrated. And I know I did. And this is where I had a lot of judgment, right, towards Jewish people, until I started to embrace Judaism, is that I looked at it and we go, well, if God is for you, who could be against you? Rah, rah, go,
Yeah.
And there was this kind of, it's easy to say when I'm over here, I'm not in Israel.
Yeah.
Rockets aren't flying in my direction.
Make it real in real time. Since we've been on this call, I've heard 6 rockets explode above my head.
Oh, yeah.
Just in the time that we've been on this call, there's been 6. Wow. So to make that real, I've looked a few times, because there's explosions and I can hear them. Right. I mean, it is real. We are living this in real time. And yet at the same time, if we say that we serve the God of Israel and that Hashem protects us and Gula is coming, then there is an aspect of having to put our money where our mouth is, right? And show
you just
up.
have to, right. There's that being aware that, you know, God is for you, who can be against you?
Yeah.
And there's acknowledging that you're still human, you're afraid. And so you have to walk into every battle going and being vulnerable with God.
Yeah.
And saying, God, I am afraid. Oh my God, I'm not emotional, but I'm like getting emotional for you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You're a sister.
Oh my gosh, this is so corny. But, you know, I think there was a time in my life when I was very insensitive about Jewish suffering and fear, because, you know, when you're a Christian and you're sitting here, you know, we've got the armor of God, but we're over in the US, we've never had a religious war, really, you know?
Yeah.
You don't really have that. It's all words. So I understand, like, if I really clock in and I try to be, and the more empathetic I am, that's why I'm getting emotional when I, you know, people need to learn to empathize with the fears that other people are going through. And so I am empathetic, but at the same time, you just walk, you know, look to your God and say, God, I'm so afraid. Look at what happened with the Holocaust. Look at what happened. But if you are for me, who can be against me? You know, I need you, you know, be vulnerable with God and trust him. And, you know, just trust that in the end, it will work out. You know, at the end of the day, the Rambam writes in Melachim Milchamot chapter, I think it is 12, where he talks about the Messianic age, laws of kings and their wars. And what he said that is that during the Messianic age, Israel is not looking to eat and drink and be merry, I'm paraphrasing, and to rule the nations of the world. All they want is the peace to be able to study the Torah. For why? So that they can merit the Olam Haba. So at this life is not, there is no YOLO. It's not this life and only this life. Yes, there's l'chaim, right? So we value life here on earth, but this is not the only life. And in the end, be brave, look to your God and say, God, if you are for me, who can be against me? And fight for what is right, because in the end, no matter what side you are on, you will receive the Olam Haba, you will receive your reward.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct. I know I was actually in America. I was in Atlanta when the October 7th happened. And I made the decision to come home. So I'm back in Israel. And a lot of people were like, why, like, at this time would you decide to like return and put your family in the middle of a war, you know? And my answer was, because I know who wins the war. Like, I know who wins the war. And the only way that darkness is able to win is if light refuses to show up and shine. And I think that's been the shift for me. And I've been really trying to shift that consciousness with others of like, no, we can't be afraid. And like, I noticed the response when I stopped that missionary at the table. I actually got attacked by several Jewish people. You're being judgmental. Everyone's welcome here. And I'm like, no. Like, do you understand what this guy's purpose is? And it was interesting that my own people were actually the people that attacked. And there was actually another Christian woman who was kind of that second category, who was searching, who wanted to know who the God of Israel was and was asking questions. And she, in my opinion, didn't pose a threat at the table because she was trying to figure out where she belonged, you know, and that I never have a problem with someone seeking, because if someone would have slammed the door on me on my journey, where would I be? Right. So and yet that was the response. And later I spoke to one of the people that kind of reprimanded me at the table and was like, everybody's allowed to have their feelings and their rights and we can share everything. And later, you know, he expressed to me like, you can't mistreat Christians.
It's not mistreatment. It's not mistreatment.
Right.
It's not. Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And so that was like, I recognized the fear, like he was afraid that I was going to be like bolstering somehow anti-Semitism and
make an enemy. Yes.
yeah, make an enemy, and we just want peace. And it's that same thing you said. It's like this incorrect version of peace that we're never going to get it. We're never going to give land away and somehow become a stronger nation, right? That whole giving land away for peace, like it doesn't work. We've seen that, right? Where we gave away hundreds and hundreds of terrorists, and they're the very terrorists who planned the October 7th. These men were incarcerated in our prisons. The person who actually planned and orchestrated this entire attack, we had in custody and released.
Yeah.
And that's not King David. That's not a theocracy. That's not, and so us not having this fear of, well, the UN is saying, well, Biden is saying, well, and I'm like, I don't care what anyone else is saying. What does the Hashem say? What does the Torah say? We have rules of war. We have rules of how we conduct things. And so that's really been, and I'm so happy that you felt comfortable enough to say that, because I feel like the Jewish people need to hear that there are people out there that will back them for standing up for what's right. Because I think this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid that, the majority of, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but the Republican conservative American world is very pro-Israel for the most part, right? And they're afraid of losing that friendship that they think they have. And I know that they think they have it, because I know I was a part of that movement, and I know that they really don't have it. It's not really a friendship. And yet, how do we bolster Am Israel actually knowing that we do have allies and that there are people that will stand up for us?
Yeah. So I think there's nothing better than an authentic, the truth always wins. Okay. So there's a way in which things are being done. So I've seen a lot of, online right now, you see a lot of Jews that are very proud, I'm Jewish, I am proud, the more you are discriminating against us is the more pride we are going to have in our Judaism. And then I'm seeing girls, in their half shirts, lighting Shabbos candles. And I'm thinking, okay, we're missing a little bit of the mark here, but, but the point is like, A for effort, but let's be consistent. You can't look at the world stage and say, we are the holy people. God is for us. Who can be against us? And then pick and choose what you do for God, how you honor him. So when there's a level of authenticity to the walk of being a Jewish person, and I know this is not going to sit well with a lot of people, I'm being honest, because I feel like everyone keeps saying the same things. Nothing is changing. Why not just say what we all are really thinking? And I'm telling you, from a non-Jewish perspective, one of the reasons I did not respect Judaism before I really started to learn from the Rabbi Mizrahis of the world, the rabbis that are like, let me tell you about Jewish law. Like, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Before I, realized that, Jews actually take Judaism seriously. Before I realized that, I thought, why do you want special treatment? Yeah. Do you really believe that I, as a human being, should think that God has chosen you simply because you're better than everybody else?
Right.
No. You were chosen for a responsibility. You have a job to do. You have a task. I'm not saying that you're less Jewish if you don't keep Shabbos. You're Jewish no matter what. You can be Jewish and, not keep Shabbos and be completely secular. You could eat pig feet all day and still be Jewish. I'm not challenging the authenticity of your Jewishness as much as the respect you're asking to be given. Respect from the nations around you, from the people around you. When you are walking in a way that shows that you acknowledge that you are a holy people, you are living a lifestyle that says, I'm striving to be holy, that's when you're going to get respect and people are going to listen. But in addition to that, be honest. Don't slander people. For example, I don't know if I want to drop a name, but I guess it's already public information. I Lashon Hara is a big thing for me. I'm trying to make certain that I don't but it's public information. Have you heard about the debate with Candace Owens and Rabbi, what was his name? Some rabbi. He accused her of being anti-Semitic and said that she was basically judging him as a Jew, and she had no right to do that. And, literally, it's like the world is looking at you and they're going to have their standards of what they consider holy.
Right.
If you are saying there is no standard for me and my children, we get to do what we want, then you have no room to tell us anything. That is my point.
Got it.
You could speak all you want to. You can get mad and up in arms and why don't you guys respect us? We have a right to exist. Yes, you have a right to exist, but you can't demand to be respected. And the respect that's going to be given to you is not, is your humanity worthy of respect? Yes, your humanity is worthy of respect. No one wants to see, no decent human person that is not a sociopath, psychopath, or a true anti-Semite wants to see a Jewish person harmed in any way. But that doesn't mean we're going to respect you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't respect Adam Sandler's, claims of being Jewish. It's like, okay, keep that to yourself. I get it. Okay, we don't need to know.
Yeah.
Okay. God willing, you become more observant, but we don't need to know your technical ethnicity.
Yeah.
If you're going to tell people, look, raise the flag and say, look, I am Jewish, I am here, I am Jewish, I am here, uphold the Torah. When you do that, in addition to be honest, don't slander people. Don't say that Christians say things or a Christian said something they didn't say. Yeah. Don't be dishonest in any way because you want to rally the troops. Just be honest and be holy. Be honest and be holy. And the truth will rise to the top and people will see and they will know that you are being mistreated. Yeah. I feel like that could have been said maybe a little bit better, but hopefully.
No, I hear what you're saying. And I actually, it's interesting when the whole Kyrie Irving incident came forward. I did not have a very popular public opinion on that because I didn't feel that Kyrie had done anything wrong. And I know that the Jewish people as a whole do not necessarily agree with that. And I think because coming from that place of trauma where they're so afraid of, just the slightest mistreatment is going to lead to something extreme. And we're seeing that actually can happen. We've had Jews killed since October 7th across America. I mean, this is a real anti-Semitism is absolutely real. But I think that when we attack people who could be our allies, and that is what I saw with the Kyrie Irving situation. I saw someone seeking Torah. I saw someone seeking his identity, and I saw someone on a journey. I saw someone that was learning Torah. I saw somebody that was identifying as a Jew. And over repeatedly, he said, I cannot be anti-Semitic if I am Semitic. Like he was clearly saying this over and over, and no one was listening. I've watched the documentary, and there's accuracies and inaccuracies in the documentary, and that's irrelevant. But what he was expressing is like, hey, he was speaking to his community, to the African-American community, about wake up to Torah. And if we can take those connections and use them as bridges instead of battlegrounds, I think we would go really far. I think Candace Owens has always been a major advocate for the Jewish people. Historically, she stood beside Ben Shapiro. She stood behind many people along the way. She also defended when she felt people were, like Kanye, were out of context, attacked, and bank accounts were closed. And so
be careful. Be careful. I don't know if you know that Candace is like, there's a whole thing right now, about it.
I don't know. There's a big thing right now. Yeah. And I know there's a big thing right now, but what I'm saying is we have to, like you're saying, we have to be able to also hear the non-Jewish world. And be able to relate to them if we want their support and their, and she's somebody that I believe has always really strongly been an advocate, and she worked for Jewish organizations. She so I think it's important that we understand that we might actually be attacking out of fear people that could be our allies if we could listen.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I completely agree with you on, your perspective on certain things. Now, I do believe that Christianity, obviously at its core is an anti-Semitic religion because
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that a lot of people adopt a lot of anti-Semitic views because of the information. Candace Owens put out a Christ is King, and I wrote a little thing about it. It's like, you're king, not mine, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, everyone was so quick to call her anti-Semitic, specifically for that comment. And then also, you know, I guess because she didn't necessarily agree with some of Israel's approach to, you know, the war that's currently happening. To me, I feel like when you're telling
anti-Semitism, because
exactly,
I'm Jewish and I don't agree with everything that's happened. In a, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I'm here and I'm an Israeli citizen, and yet I have opinions on what I agree with. And, you know, do I agree with every decision that's been made? No, I think Iran should have been flattened yesterday, if, you know, personally, you know, but that's, again, I think this is that place of returning to morality. I think that's so important is understanding that I can disagree with someone, and that's not hate speech, right? We've gotten to this point where, like, if I say I don't agree with homosexuality does not make me homophobic. But you know, like this is that piece where everything is so blurred in culture right now. And I think that's also where it's coming in, is who are our allies and who are not our allies, right? And what does that really look like?
Absolutely. And I think that there are many people that could become allies if we would just handle them with a sense of, like, just be honest about what you're perceiving. Like, for example, with the whole Candace Owens thing, with the whole Kyrie Irving, Kanye, whatever. If you said, look, I get it. Your perspective is that Christ is the savior of the world. If I were in your shoes, I would probably feel the same way. Right. Because you are literally believing that this is your God, he's the God of the universe, and everyone's rejecting him. But let me tell you why I don't believe it. Make it a conversation. It's not that you're crazy. It's that I strongly disagree. Yeah. And here's why. This is the conversation. And you need to allow Gentiles to be honest about why they don't maybe respect certain things or trust certain things about, you know, even Jewish culture in general. Like, allow the conversation to evolve. As soon as you get triggered and act out of, you know, fear because you're afraid that, you know, God forbid this conversation evolves is going to lead to. That's not how it happened. Okay. In all of these issues, for instance, okay, let's point out why all of these tragic things happen that you're so afraid is going to reoccur. What happened in October 7th was a result of everyone trying to keep the peace and trying to be everybody's friend, not seeing that the enemy is among you, next door to you, not having adequate guard, you know.
Have work passes, work visas to enter our country and work on those same moshavs that they slaughtered people on.
Correct. And
have a conversation.
Allowing even your own children to, there can be laws. You can set up laws in Israel to say, look, this is the Holy Land. You want to do that, go to America. But here in Israel, we don't do that. We don't allow that. A lot of things wouldn't have happened if everyone was a little bit more, if the Israeli government was a little bit more aware that, there needs to be a certain sense of responsibility for the image of Israel on the world stage, and stop trying to be everybody's buddy. Stop trying to be the democracy of the world. Stop trying to mimic after America and be the world's greatest, smallest democracy. Stop it. Okay. You are a nation that was literally, unlike all these other nations that claim to be established under God, that is literally your claim to the land. Is that God took it from Canaan and gave it to you because they were child sacrificing and all those kinds of wicked acts. He took it from them. Why? Because they corrupted the land. You're not allowed to corrupt the land. That's one. And then two, allow the conversation for nations out there to start asking questions. Well, why do Jews do this? Why do Jews do that? You know, allow it to be a conversation. And it's a simple explanation. That's how I became, you know, one of the most controversial rabbis that are out there, Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, who as a former atheist, would never have been my cup of tea. But
Right.
I took what he had to say because it didn't seem like he was out to get me. It just seemed like he was telling the truth. He was just like, oh, you have this. This is how you think. No, let me tell you how it is. This is Torah law.
Right.
This is Torah law. You know, and and if you look at Rabbi Ruvain, and I'm not endorsing their teachings, lock, stock, and barrel. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying they have a lot of influence over Rabbi Ruvain and Rabbi Mizrahi, though they're very controversial. They have a lot of influence over the Gentile world. And why is that? Because people are open to the truth. If you're willing to have a conversation, we're not as closed-minded as you might think. People want to know the truth.
It's amazing. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think as a Jewish people, as we get stronger, this is, I think, the ultimate purpose of this platform is to educate the Jewish people on the dangers of being passive in these areas, you know, when it comes to Christian infiltration, when it comes to allowing, you know, Christian organizations to be here. I mean, we have a organization here in Israel that is a Christian organization that is designed to adopt Jewish children into Christian homes, into missionary homes.
Stop it.
Yeah,
No.
we have coffee shops that are open that do free coffee that are sharing the gospel in Tel Aviv, where our people are completely uneducated. We have dental clinics that are in the name of Jesus, providing free dental care to our Holocaust survivors. And my challenge to the Jewish people is, why does a Holocaust survivor not have dental care in the state of Israel? Right? Like,
exactly. This is a veteran.
Missionary has it in there, right? And I think the biggest fear in general is losing the support of the, you know, Protestant world. And I think that's
Can I jump in and say something really quick?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so because I think this is very important. Everyone's not going to be your friend. Like you could follow the recommendation that I'm giving and that you're putting out there, which is, you know, be honest, but also be holy, and you're still going to make enemies. You have to understand that, like, you can't live your life ever on a personal level, on a larger scale, like as a community. You cannot live your life trying to make everybody your friends. Like, it's just never going to happen. People will look for reasons to hate you if they want to hate you. So if someone is an anti-Semite through and through and through, no matter how polite you are, no matter how fair you are in the conversation, they're going to hate you. Be okay with that. Like, you can't please everyone. I just have to say that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, I know the host that was at that table, like, I was kind of like, why aren't we escorting this missionary away from a Purim table? And, you know, I said to the host, I said, we have Haman sitting at the Purim Suda. Like, do you understand, like, that very essence of coming in, attacking our weaklings, you know, going after the stragglers of Israel, right? And what did he do? He circled the room for the elderly that were sitting alone. For, you know, I watched and I was like, do you understand? He changed numbers, and I had to go to the elderly person and say, please delete this number, you know, because I know this is what they're doing. They are targeting our people. And I think because it's not a part of the Jewish psyche, and the Jewish psyche is so in a state of defend ourselves, they're not even recognizing, like you said, that there's a wolf at the table. Like there's literally a wolf that is here to devour the next generation of Jewish people, and we're letting it. There's people wanting to devour within our country. And so becoming that voice. I had a question for you in regards to religious freedom. This seems to be like a big thing right now. Everybody is like, I have the right to practice my religion and the right to practice my religion. And what that sounds like for a Jew versus many of the other major, you know, religions of the world is very different. So for me to practice my religion means I keep Shabbat in my home. I only eat kosher meat. I keep holidays, right? And part of many of the other religions of the world is that needs to be imposed on others. And I sometimes struggle with that concept of what is really religious freedom, because you have the freedom to have your faith, but is religious freedom equal imposing those beliefs on me? And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts from a non-Jewish perspective of what that really looks like in terms of morality.
So when it comes to, I'll touch on the Noahide laws, right? It's justice is a part of our Noahide laws, the mandate to establish systems of justice. And in that, we are ordered to set up courts, which we consider our current systems that are in place, courts of justice that are adequate enough to be able to, like, we can modify it and work with it and improve upon it in order to bring it to the status or the level of moral, according to Torah standards. And one of the laws that I believe that we need to put into place is that there should be no federally protected religions as institutions, meaning there don't need to be tax breaks for, religious organizations and all these kinds of things. Religious freedom should be that you have the right in your home to worship the God that you choose to worship. In your home, what you do in your household is your business. Right. Once it reaches a federal level, that's when you're playing with an area that is, or once it reaches any level where you're imposing it on others. Right. This is where it becomes a little bit of this is where it gets sticky. And so what we want is one day for religious institutions to not have certain protections that they currently have, because that protection almost validates them as some sort of, something worthy of honor or special protection, when really it's your own personal beliefs. Like, there's no need to protect someone's belief system. You can believe what you want. You can do whatever you want in your own household. Right. And this is another, I know I'm kind of going a little bit off, but I'm doing that for a reason, because it's important as far as the Christian view when it comes to Noahide law and their fear that Noahide law is going to come in where all the Christians are going to be beheaded. They're going to take down all the churches.
This is a belief. I've heard it.
So to explain it, what it is it's saying exactly what you're saying. We're not coming in to say, okay, Christians are all going to be murdered. It's just stop taking your man-made religion and essentially using it as propaganda for whatever, right? If you are acting in an idolatrous way in your home, who can know but God? Right. Who can know? We're not going to have the Gestapo knocking at your door. Are you a Christian? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Live your life. But we don't need we don't need all of these religious houses of worship out there saying to the world, this is how it should be, because it sends all kinds of messages about, right and wrong that is, it's just not a good message. When it comes to Israel, though, there's a little bit of a difference, right? Israel is supposed to be a theocracy. Now, unless everyone in America said, look, we were established under, whatever man-made religion, and therefore this is a religion we all accept, and we're going to, that would be one thing, but that's not the case. America is not a land that anyone considers the Christian Holy Land or the Muslim Holy Land. Okay. Right. That's not what it is. Israel, however, is a holy land, and that is the claim. We existed before Palestine, right? That's because you were established in antiquity by God, right? By no one else but God. And so for that reason, the religion of Judaism has to be the framework for the government of Israel. And it's different. So, they can move beyond the boundaries of their homes and into kind of this federal space. Right. Because it's supposed to be a theocracy, whereas here in all the 70 nations, we don't all share the same faith, and none of us are making the claim that our claims aren't accepted by everyone, that this was established by one particular religious god or whatever. So our lands are a little bit different, and therefore you are free to practice your religion in your home, in your life. Right. But you're not to impose that in any way on everyone around you. Israel being an exception because of its origin.
Right. No, yeah, that I think that's really key, that I've been wanting to like help both the Jewish people and non-Jewish people to understand the, and I know that I grew up, being a part of the 80%, right? Growing up in a Protestant household, and you Merry Christmas, Happy Easter, these were common things. And then when like I started realizing, wow, like, there's people that are celebrating Kwanzaa, there's people that are celebrating Hanukkah, like not everybody. And by me having this assumption that my way is the way and I get to impose this. And so that's what I've realized, that I didn't even realize how much religion was a bully until I wasn't a part of the majority. And I think that was very eye-opening for me. And so, the Christian world needs to understand, I have no problem if you want, like you said, if you want to do idol worship, you have free will. There will be judgment between you and the creator, but, do that. But I do have an issue with you attempting to convert the Jewish people, of you sneaking into our Purim Seudas and sitting at our table and trying to, insist that we follow a faith that you have. That's not religious freedom. And that's me asking you to stop is not oppression. That was what came up in that conversation, was like, wow, like you were really offensive. And I was like, no, it was really offensive that someone felt that they could come into our holiday and decide to take over it with the intent to change the religion of every person in that room. That's what's offensive.
Offensive.
I think that's, and yet we're afraid to say that. And when I had that conversation with a few of the people that had confronted me, I think the light bulb went on of like, no, do you not understand how offensive that was? That he was sneakiness and connivingness to come in. I mean, we have people who have done Brit Milahs that were not even Jewish, that were missionaries, pretending to be mohels and doing circumcisions on babies. And these people, like, they're not even Jewish, and they're pretending they're pastors, they're missionaries. And there's people that were married by these people. There's people who their mezuzahs were written by them. And these people, and so that is not religious freedom. That is sneakiness. There's nothing moral about that. Like,
at all. Exactly. It's very immoral. Flip it around. Could you walk into a Christian home and start to say, would you even feel comfortable walking into a Christian home during one of their little Easter celebrations, into their home and saying, JC isn't real, and all kinds of, you wouldn't do that out of the simple fact that it's their home. It is their sacred space. They get to come. When people want to, and this is what we have now, thankfully, there's a good and a bad to everything. The internet can be a very bad tool, but it's also a very good tool. When people want to know things, they'll search it out. You don't need to impose your ideas upon them. They will, most people are going to, get to the truth of a matter because they're looking for it. So real religious freedom is the freedom to allow people to, get to where they're going in their pace, in their way, and to seek it out themselves.
Absolutely. I guess we're going to have to finish up soon, right? But I would love to know, what can it look like? I really feel like the Jewish people, because they're coming from this place, they do need to know that they have allies, and they need to know that people will stand for them. But there is going to be an expectation of who we show up as, right? And I think that's what I'm hearing from you, is that you want us to stand for you, then be the holy nation that we can stand for, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Let me give you some reassurances, though. And this is all Hashem as well. People that are coming, Noahides, from my experience, more than less. No, and when I say Noahides, again, there's the Ger Toshav, which are Noahides that are permitted to reside in the land of Israel, essentially having some sort of a residency status. And then there are the Hasidei Umos Ha'olam and the Chachmei Umos Ha'olam. Hasidei Umos Ha'olam are pious of the nations who are following the 7 laws because they were given by Moshe and Sinai, and because God commanded them to do it. And then there's the Chachmei Umos Ha'olam, which are the wise of the nations, and they are essentially following the 7 laws. And we kind of discussed a little bit before this about why there's a misunderstanding. Whether or not a Chachmei can actually follow the 7 laws. Yes, they can. because it's said right there in Laws of Kings 8, verse 11. But the wise of the nations are also out there, and they're following the 7 laws as well, maybe for more rational reasons. But most Noahides, no matter where they're coming from, there's almost nothing that a Jewish person can do wrong. So that's the reassurance I want to give you. Like, even if you're not following the Torah the way that it's supposed to be, it's almost like there's a softening that happens when you get to this place. Especially if you're one of the pious among the nations, right? There's a huge softening that happens where there's a lot of understanding, because we go, okay, well, these are human beings. They're just human beings, right? But you're not going to get that for everyone else in the world. And they're going to, that's the ones that are really judging you, right? Yeah. And so, you want to be able to present yourself as a holy nation, not for our sake, as Noahides that are already rallying behind you, no matter what. Like, we see you stub your toe, and maybe we see someone driving on Shabbat and they're wearing a kippah. We go, okay, that person's not observant. It's how they were raised. We understand the kidnapped child kind of element there. But if it's the rest of the world, you are being looked at under microscope. So be aware.
Show up. Show up. Absolutely. And I think that's what, it's funny. My brother is from a military background, and he was like, why are you guys like, you're appearing weak. You're listening to everyone else. And it was interesting to hear his perspective, and, here his sister is like taking, 70 rockets a day over her head. And he's just like, stand up, why is your government not fighting back? And it was interesting, and that is, I think, part of the world's, our need is to be who we are, and if you look at historically speaking, every time there's been a major tragedy, there's been assimilation and us becoming not who we're meant to be as a distinct,
more like us rather than
right. I researched a lot of my family history in the Inquisition. My family were forced to convert in the Inquisition and sent to Spain. I'm from Spain to Mexico. And when I look at the, all of the Inquisition records and the transcripts, my family were selling out. They were becoming Christians. They converted for money. They didn't want to lose their status as a treasurer. They didn't want and so I see that I'm like, okay, now we're at that place in history again. Like, we can't keep making those same mistakes. We can't keep choosing to please the nations. We have to be the light. And to be that, we have to be not afraid and to stand up. And I think in particular to this missionary infiltration, and that's really where Speak Up, when they asked me to host, I was like, absolutely, because we need to speak up and we need to be able to have these difficult conversations. And I thank you for being gracious enough and brave enough to say these things, because I think the Jewish world needs to hear them. They need to hear that, every person that doesn't agree with us doesn't mean they're our enemy, right? Because we are sensitive to anti-Semitism. And yet at the same time, we're allowing absolutely our enemies at our tables, right? Absolutely. On one of the holiest days of the year. We have to understand that our energy needs to be, sent in the right direction, and to make sure that we are protecting our families and protecting our land. And I think that, I'm a firm believer that if we got rid of all idol worship in the land immediately, that we would have that redemption. We would merit safety. We would live here in peace. And we don't, because, 20 minutes from me, there's a church, and 30 minutes, that's the reality, is that's what exists. And that's, that's not what Hashem wants. He said to tear down all of their high places. And so I think, and it's not going to be a popular opinion, but I mean,
and it's not Christians, if you're listening, it's not saying that they want to destroy your person. It's just, you can go over there, and be you, and we're going to stay here and be us. We're just wanting to tear down the building and to allow you freedom to go elsewhere. Come join me over in the US, guys. Okay? And we'll still have a problem with your temples and your churches, but we're not the whole thing.
Right. And I think that's the key is us as Am Israel going from convince and defend to we are who we are and this is our land. And when we stop letting other people dictate what is our land and what isn't, and what we're allowed to do to defend ourselves and what we're not allowed to do to defend ourselves, and what we allow in our land and what we don't. And we have also work within us to clean up, right? The way we treat each other, the way we treat the world. These are all things that have to be worked through. And so I just want to thank you so much. I feel like you brought such an amazing perspective, and I hope that it really hits for people. You were authentic, you were real, and I know that it was coming from a place of love. So I really hope that everyone is able to receive what you had to say. And I hope that it educates the Jewish world on a non-Jewish perspective on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.